"Get off my land," I bellowed, my voice cracking across the golden expanse of my wheat field, startling a flock of crows into the sky. My boots crunched against the dry soil as I sprinted toward the red SUV tearing through my crops, its tires flattening stalks like a monster truck at a rally. My heart hammered in my chest, not just from the run, but from the sheer audacity of it all. For months, I'd been dealing with them, the Karen sisters, Cindy and Linda, two women who treated my farm like their personal racetrack. I'm Jake Thompson, a 34-year-old third-generation farmer in rural Ohio. And this 50-acre plot is more than my livelihood, it's my legacy. But to the Karens, it was just a shortcut to save 5 minutes on their commute. It all started 8 months ago on a crisp fall afternoon. I was repairing a fence near the creek when a shiny red SUV pulled up on the dirt road bordering my property. Out stepped Cindy, the older sister. With her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that screamed, "I always get my way," she introduced herself and her sister Linda, who stayed in the car, scrolling on her phone with a bored expression. Cindy explained they'd just moved to a fancy new subdivision a few miles away, and the county road to town was such a hassle. With its curves and potholes, could they, she asked, batting her eyelashes, just cut through my field to save time? Her tone suggested she expected me to roll out a red carpet. I was polite but firm. "No, ma'am. This is private property, and I've got crops to protect. The road's there for a reason." I thought that'd be the end of it. But Cindy's smile faltered, and her eyes narrowed like I'd just insulted her personally. "It's just a field," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We're not hurting anything." Before I could respond, she climbed back into the SUV, and they peeled off, leaving a cloud of dust in my face. I shook my head, figuring they'd get over it. I was wrong. The next day, I found tire tracks slicing through my wheat field, right where I'd been planting a new crop. Stalks were crushed, and the soil was compacted, meaning weeks of work ruined. I put up a no trespassing sign, thinking it'd be clear enough. But the sisters didn't care. They came back, day after day, their SUV carving a path through my land like they owned it. Sometimes Cindy drove, smirking as she waved like we were old friends. Other times it was Linda blasting pop music and ignoring my signs completely. I'd chase after them, shouting, but they'd just speed up, their laughter echoing as they disappeared over the hill. I tried reasoning with them. One evening, I waited by the road and flagged them down. Linda rolled down her window, her face twisted in annoyance. "What's your problem?" she snapped. I explained calmly how their shortcut was costing me thousands in damaged crops. Cindy leaned over, her voice sugary sweet. "Oh, Jake, don't be so dramatic. It's just a little grass." I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to yell. "It's not grass. It's my livelihood." They exchanged a look, rolled their eyes, and drove off, leaving me fuming. The disrespect stung worse than the financial hit. My grandpa built this farm from nothing, and my dad passed it to me before he died. Every acre is a piece of their memory, and these sisters were treating it like a dirt bike track. I lost sleep, pacing my porch, wondering how to stop them. I considered legal action, but my neighbor Tom, a retired mechanic, warned me the courts moved slow, and the sisters would likely play innocent. The sheriff was no help either without hard evidence. He could only issue warnings. I needed a plan, something that'd make them regret ever setting foot or tire on my land. Watched the sun set over my battered field, I vowed to fight back. The Karen sisters were about to learn, you don't mess with a farmer's pride. The Karen sisters' arrogance had pushed me to my limit. The red SUV slicing through my crops wasn't just a nuisance, it was a declaration of war on my livelihood, my heritage, and my patience. I tried everything, signs, fences, polite requests, even shouting matches. But Cindy and Linda treated my warnings like a bad joke, their smirks and eye rolls burning into my memory. I wasn't going to let them win. One chilly evening, as I sat on my creaky porch swing, sipping bitter black coffee under a sky blazing with stars, my mind churned. The sheriff's words haunted me. "Get proof, Jake, or it's your word against theirs." Fine wouldn't. do. I wanted them to feel the sting of their entitlement, to regret ever setting their tires on my land. I needed a plan that had hit them where it hurt most, their shiny red SUV, symbol of their smugness. I paced the porch, the wooden planks groaning under my boots, and let my mind wander over every inch of my farm. I knew this land like the back of my hand, every dip, every slope, every patch of stubborn clay. That's when it hit me, the low spot by the creek. It was a natural dip in the field, hidden among the wheat stalks, where the soil turned to thick, gluey mud after a good rain. The sisters always cut through there, thinking it was a clever detour around my fences. Their SUV would barrel through, kicking up dirt, oblivious to the damage. If I could make that spot even boggier, say, by flooding it with water from the creek, it'd become a tire-sucking swamp they couldn't escape. They'd be stuck, humiliated, and I'd catch it all on video. Best of all, it wasn't illegal. I'd just be giving Mother Nature a nudge, letting my land fight back. The idea sparked a fire in me, but I needed to think it through. I grabbed a notepad and sat at my kitchen table, the single bulb overhead casting shadows as I sketched the low spot. The creek was close enough to divert water with a few irrigation pipes and a makeshift dam. If I soaked the area for a day, or two, the mud would be deep enough to trap their SUV, but shallow enough to look like a natural hazard. I imagined their face, Cindy's fake smile fading, Linda's scowl twisting into panic as their precious vehicle sank. I'd need to disguise the trap, maybe with straw or loose dirt to make it blend into the field. And I'd record every second, proof of their trespassing, and a story my YouTube audience would devour. I called my buddy Tom, a retired mechanic who'd lived in town forever and had a knack for fixing anything. I drove to his place, a cluttered farmhouse with rusted tools in the yard, and found him tinkering with an old carburetor in his garage. Over cold beers, I laid out my plan. "You're nuts, Jake," he said, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "But I'm in. Those sisters need a lesson." Tom hated their attitude as much as I did. Last month, Linda had chewed him out at the gas station for taking too long to fill his truck. He offered his old John Deere tractor and a pile of irrigation pipes from his shed. "Own that. Low spot into a swamp," he said, eyes glinting. "And throw in some old logs under the mud, snag their axles. Make it look like the land just fought back." Tom's idea was genius. Logs would ensure their SUV stayed stuck, and they'd have no one to blame but themselves. We spent the evening brainstorming, laughing over how Cindy would react when her designer boots hit the mud. Tom even suggested a backup plan. If the mud didn't work, I could block their path with hay bales next time. But the mud trap felt right, simple, effective, and poetic. They'd trespassed on my land. Now my land would trap them the next morning. I walked the low spot, testing the soil with a shovel. It was already soft, perfect for soaking up water. I measured the distance to the creek, about 50 yards, and planned where to lay the pipes. I'd need to work fast to flood the area before their next drive-through, which I'd noticed happened most days around noon. I drove to Tom's to pick up the tractor and pipes, loading them into my truck under a gray dawn sky. Sketched a detailed map of the trap, marking where the water would flow and where the logs would sit. I even practiced my cover story. "Oh, that spot's always muddy after rain. Should have stayed on the road." That night I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with every detail. What if they spotted the pipes? What if the mud wasn't deep enough? I got up at 3 a.m., pulled on my jacket, and walked the field by moonlight, double-checking the low spot. The soil gave under my boots, promising a perfect trap. I pictured their SUV sinking, their screams echoing, and my phone capturing it all. This wasn't just about saving my crops anymore, it was about justice. It's about showing Cindy and Linda that my land wasn't their playground. I was declaring war on their entitlement, and I was going to win. The first light of dawn painted the sky pink as I fired up Tom's old John Deere tractor, its engine coughing to life like an old man clearing his throat. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel, not from the chill but from the adrenaline coursing through me. Today was the day I'd set the trap for the Karen sisters, and every detail had to be perfect. I'd spent the night tossing and turning, replaying the plan in my head, imagining their red SUV sinking into the mud and their smug faces crumpling. This wasn't just about stopping their trespassing, It was about reclaiming my farm, my pride, and the memory of my grandpa and dad who'd poured their lives into this land. I drove the tractor to the low spot by the creek, shallow basin about 20 feet wide, hidden among the wheat stalks. The soil here was heavy clay, notorious for turning into a sticky mess when wet. It was the perfect spot for my trap, and the sisters' daily shortcut ran right through it. I parked the tractor and grabbed the irrigation pipes from my truck's 6 rusted 10-foot sections Tom had scavenged from an old barn. My plan was simple but precise. Divert water from the creek to flood the low spot, turning it into a tire-sucking swamp. The mud had to be deep enough to trap their SUV, but shallow, enough to look like a natural hazard, not a setup. I'd cover it with straw to hide the trap, and with any luck, they'd drive right into it. I started by digging a shallow trench from the creek to the low spot, using a shovel to carve a path for the water. The creek was only 50 yards away, its gentle trickle promising enough flow to do the job. My boots sank into the damp soil as I worked, the cool air filling my lungs with the scent of earth and wheat. I laid the first pipe, connecting it to the creek with a makeshift dam of rocks and old boards I'd found in my barn. The water began to flow, a slow but steady stream, gurgling through the pipe and pooling in the low spot. I watched it spread, the soil darkening as it soaked up the moisture. My heart raced. This was really happening. By mid-morning, the low spot was starting to look like a bog, but it wasn't enough. I wanted mud so thick it'd grab their tires like quicksand. I added 2 more pipes, angling them to spread the water evenly across the 20-foot patch. The tractor came in handy here, its bucket scooping dirt to reinforce the trench and keep the water flowing. I tested the mud with my shovel, plunging it into the ground. It sank a foot deep with a satisfying squelch, the kind of sound that promised trouble for any vehicle. I grinned, imagining Cindy's SUV sinking, its shiny red paint splattered with muck. Tom's idea about the logs was next. I hauled 3 gnarled oak branches from the edge of my property, each about 4 feet long and thick enough to snag an axle. I buried them in the mud, spacing them irregularly so they'd look like natural debris if anyone checked. The logs were my insurance policy. If the mud didn't hold the SUV, these would. I stepped back, wiping sweat from my brow, and surveyed the scene. The low spot was now a glistening, deceptive swamp, the water seeping deeper into the clay. But it still looked too obvious, like a trap waiting to be sprung, to disguise it. I grabbed armfuls of loose straw from a nearby hay bale and scattered it across the surface. The straw clung to the wet soil, blending seamlessly with the surrounding field. I walked around the trap, checking it from every angle, making sure it looked like just another patch of ground. From the path the sisters took, it was nearly invisible. Only a trained eye would notice the slight sheen of moisture or the faint outline of the pipes. I kicked a few clods of dirt over the pipe ends for good measure, then tested the ground. Again, my boot sank ankle deep, and I had to yank it free with effort. Perfect. I set up my phone on a small tripod behind a hay bale, angled to capture the low spot without being seen. I'd noticed the sisters usually drove through around noon, so I had a few hours to wait. The anticipation was electric, my stomach knotting with nerves and excitement. What if they spotted the trap? What if they took a different route today? I pushed the doubts aside, focusing on the plan. I'd even rehearsed my response if they accused me. That spot's always muddy after rain. Should have stayed on the road. It was plausible Ohio springs were wet, and no one could prove I'd engineered it. As noon approached, I hid behind the hay bale, checking my phone's battery and adjusting the angle one last time. The sun climbed higher, casting harsh light across the field.
Ow.
But the trap remained hidden, the straw blending perfectly with the wheat. My pulse pounded as I heard the faint hum of an engine in the distance. I peeked over the bale, and there, it was their red SUV, glinting like a predator, cresting the hill. Cindy was driving, Linda beside her, both laughing like they were on a joyride. They ignored my new private property sign, veering toward the low spot as always. I hit record, my hands trembling. This was it. Then splash. The SUV hit. The mud, its front end sinking fast. The engine roared as Cindy floored it, but the tires spun, spraying muck. I zoomed in, capturing their shock. The trap had worked better than I'd dreamed. The sisters' carefree laughter morphed into high-pitched shrieks that echoed across my field like a siren. "What the hell is this?" Cindy screamed, her voice cracking with fury as she slammed her manicured hands against the steering wheel of the red SUV, now mired in the muddy trap I'd crafted. The vehicle's front end was buried deep, its shiny paint splattered with thick brown muck. The engine roared as Cindy gunned the accelerator, but the tires only spun helplessly, flinging globs of mud in every direction, some splattering the windshield. Linda, in the passenger seat, leaned out the window, her face turning a shade redder than their SUV. "You did this, you jerk," she bellowed, her voice dripping with venom, as if she knew I was watching. And I was crouched behind a hay bale, my phone recording every glorious second of their downfall, my heart pounding with a mix of triumph and anticipation. I stayed hidden, zooming in to capture the chaos unfolding. The sisters' SUV was stuck fast, the logs I'd buried beneath the mud doing their job, snagging the undercar shint so they couldn't budge. Cindy tried again, revving the engine until it whined, but the vehicle only sank deeper, the mud. Now lapping at the doors, her designer boots hit the ground as they climbed out, and the scene became pure comedy gold. Cindy, in her pristine white blouse and skinny jeans, stepped into the muck and immediately sank ankle-deep, her arms flailing for balance. My shoes. She wailed as if her $200 boots were the real tragedy. The mud sucked at her feet, making obscene squelching noises with every step. Linda, in a floral sundress, tried to stay composed, but her first step sent her skidding, and she grabbed the SUV's door handle to steady herself, only to smear mud across her outfit. Then it happened. Cindy, in a desperate attempt to push. The SUV from behind slipped spectacularly, her feet shooting out from under her. She landed on her backside with a wet, resounding splat, mud splashing up to her waist. Her scream was a mix of rage and humiliation, her blonde hair now streaked with dirt. Linda, trying to help her sister, reached out, but the mud betrayed her too. She lost her footing, tumbling forward and landing on her knees beside Cindy, her dress now a canvas of brown sludge. The two of them were a sight, flailing, slipping, and cursing, their designer outfits ruined, their faces contorted in fury. "This is your fault," Linda shrieked, pointing a muddy finger toward the field, as if I'd appear to take the blame. I bit my lip to keep from laughing, my phone capturing every second of their meltdown for my YouTube audience. The sisters. Attempts to free the SUV were futile. Cindy, now back on her feet, pushed against the rear bumper, her boots sinking deeper with every shove. "This is ridiculous," she yelled, her voice cracking as mud oozed up her calves. Linda, ever the strategist, tried to direct from the side, shouting, "Turn the wheel left." No, right. But the SUV didn't budge, the buried logs holding it like a vice. The mud was relentless, clinging to their legs, their hands, their hair. Cindy's face was a mask of rage, her fake eyelashes now caked with dirt, giving her a raccoon-like appearance. Linda's phone, which she'd pulled out to call for help, slipped from her muddy fingers and landed in the muck with a soft plop. "No." She screamed, diving after it, only to emerge with the device coated in sludge, screen flickering uselessly. I couldn't resist stepping out from behind the hay bale, phone still rolling. "Told you to stay off my land," I called, keeping my voice calm but firm, letting it carry across the field. Cindy's head snapped up, her eyes blazing like twin lasers. "You'll pay for this, you hick." She spat, shaking a muddy fist. "I'm calling the cops." I shrugged, unfazed. "Go ahead, you're trespassing. Call whoever you want." That shut them up for a split second, their faces registering the reality they were on my land, breaking my rules. But Linda wasn't done. "This is entrapment. We'll sue you into the ground," she screeched, her voice hitting a pitch that could have shattered glass. Cindy joined in, ranting about her ruined boots, her car, her dignity. As if I cared about their drama, I leaned against a fence post, still filming, and offered a solution. "I can call a tow truck," I said, pausing for effect, "but it'll cost you, cash up front." That sent them into overdrive. Cindy stomped forward, tried to, her boots sticking with every step, and jabbed a finger at me. You planned this. You'll be sorry when our lawyer's done with you." Linda, meanwhile, was on her knees, still trying to revive her phone, muttering about public access rights she'd clearly invented. I just smiled, letting them rant. The more they flailed, the better the footage. Their SUV was going nowhere, and neither were they. The sisters' meltdown was a masterclass in entitlement. Cindy tried to wipe the mud from her face, only to smear it worse, giving her a war paint look that would have been hilarious if it wasn't so satisfying. Linda, now standing, attempted to march toward me, but the mud held her fast, each step. A struggle that left her panting. "This is an outrage," she yelled, as if the universe owed her a clean getaway. They tried pushing the SUV again, together this time, but the mud and logs laughed at their efforts. The vehicle sank deeper, the exhaust pipe now gurgling in the muck. My phone battery was holding strong, and I zoomed in on their faces. Cindy's fury, Linda's desperation, knowing this video would be pure gold for my YouTube channel. The Karen sisters were learning a lesson, one muddy, humiliating moment at a time. The Karen sisters stood defeated, caked in mud, their red SUV still lodged in the swampy trap I'd engineered. Their screams had faded to frustrated huffs. As the reality sank in, they weren't going anywhere without help. I called Tom's cousin Mike, who ran a towing service in town. He arrived in his battered tow truck, a grin spreading across his face as he took in the scene. Cindy and Linda, dripping with muck. Their designer outfits transformed into soggy brown messes, and their precious SUV half submerged in my field. "Well, damn, Jake," Mike chuckled, scratching his beard. "Sure got him good." I nodded, still holding my phone, which had captured every moment of their meltdown. The tow was going to cost them. I wasn't about to let them off easy. Mike hooked up the SUV, but the mud and buried logs made it a beast of a job. It took 2 hours of grinding winches and careful maneuvering to free the vehicle, the engine groaning as it finally lurched onto solid ground. Mud dripped from the undercarriage, and the one shiny paint was a dull, filthy mess. Mike handed Cindy the bill, $500. Cash up front, no exceptions. Her face twisted like she'd swallowed a lemon, but she dug into her muddy purse, pulling out crumpled bills while Linda muttered curses under her breath. "This is robbery." Cindy snapped, thrusting the money at Mike. He just shrugged. "Shouldn't have driven through a farm, ladies." They glared at me, but I met their eyes with a calm smile. They'd trespassed, and now they'd paid the price literally and figuratively as they drove off. Their SUV rattling with caked mud, I knew they wouldn't be back. The humiliation was too much, even for their inflated egos. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd sketched my plan and edited the video. The footage was better than I'd hoped. The SUV's dramatic plunge, Cindy's epic fall, Linda's phone fiasco, and their screaming meltdown, all captured in crisp detail. I added captions for extra flair. Karen shortcut fail. Mud. One SUV zero and titled it Karen Sisters vs. My Farm. Epic mud trap revenge. I uploaded it to my YouTube channel, a small side hustle where I posted farming tips and the occasional prank. By midnight, the views were climbing, and by morning, it had gone viral. The video exploded, racking up millions of views in days. Comments flooded in. Farm justice. Karens got what they deserved. This is the best revenge ever. People love the underdog story of farmers standing up to entitled trespassers with a clever legal trap. Some viewers shared their own Karen stories, from rude neighbors to pushy customers, turning the comment section into a cathartic community. Others begged for a follow-up, asking if the sisters ever returned. I pinned a comment. No sign of them yet, but I've got more mud if they try. The likes and shares kept rolling, and my subscriber count skyrocketed. Turning my modest channel into a local sensation, word spread fast in our small Ohio town. At the diner, folks slapped me on the back, laughing about the Mud Sisters. The local hardware store owner, who dealt with Cindy's complaints about overpriced nails, showed the video on his phone to every customer. Even the sheriff, who'd been powerless before, chuckled when I ran into him at the gas station. "You didn't break any laws, Jake," he said, shaking his head. "Smart move." The sisters, meanwhile, became the town's cautionary tale. I heard through the grapevine they'd tried to complain to the mayor, claiming I'd sabotaged their car, but without proof, their story fell apart. The mayor, a farmer's son, reportedly told them to use the damn road next time. Their reputation took a bigger hit than their SUV nobody. In town took them seriously anymore. The YouTube revenue was a game changer. The video's ad earnings poured in, enough to cover the crop damage the sisters had caused, and then some. I used the money to repair the flattened wheat fields, replanting with high-yield seeds I'd been eyeing for years. I also invested in a stronger fence steel posts and barbed wire, no more flimsy wood that the sisters could ignore. I even splurged on a new irrigation system, ensuring my crops would thrive no matter what. The farm looked better than ever, its golden fields stretching under the Ohio sun, a testament to my family's legacy and my own determination. But the real victory wasn't the money or the fence, it was the peace. For the first time in months, I could walk my fields without dreading the sight of tire tracks. The low spot by the creek, now drained and replanted, stood as a quiet reminder of my win. I kept the video online not just for the views, but as a warning to anyone else who might think my land was a free-for-all. The sisters had vanished from my life, reportedly sticking to the county road or moving to another town altogether. I didn't care where they went, as long as they stayed off my property. Reflecting on it all, I felt a mix of pride and relief. My grandpa used to say, "The land takes care of those who take care of it." I'd honored that, defending my farm with brains, not brawn. The experience taught me something else too. Sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom or a badge, it comes from a well-placed trap and a good laugh. I started checking my fields daily, not out of paranoia but pride, knowing I'd protected what was mine. My YouTube channel grew with viewers requesting more stories about farm life or clever pranks. I even toyed with the idea of a series, Farmer versus Trespassers. If the Karen sisters ever dared return, I was ready. I'd kept Tom's tractor and pipes, and I knew a few other tricks, bales. Deeper mud, maybe even a scarecrow rig to startle. The low spot was still there, waiting for its next guest. For now, though I enjoyed the quiet, the rustle of wheat in the breeze, the knowledge that my land was mine again. The Karen sisters had learned the hard way, don't mess with the farmer's land. I had plenty of mud and ideas, if anyone else tried to take a shortcut.